Hello, everyone, and welcome to Power Hour. Hello, Joelle. Today's
Hello.
topic is going to be how to create and export an exported CSV file from a Power App. So, in the Power App, you'll be able to click a button that will give you a CSV file, and we'll talk about all the different ways that you can receive that CSV file and different options available and what data you're sending. So a flow is used behind the scenes to do this, but it's got a lot of moving parts. So we'll be diving right in. And if you are new to Power Hour, this is a show we do Wednesdays at 11, and it's really geared towards business users. It's not super technical, so we're not programmers. We don't know code. We're just using these out of the box functionalities in these products. And we have a live chat going on in Teams. So wherever you're watching this video, there is a link down below to request to join. And we actually invite you into Teams to chat with us. So come say hi in the chat. And I'll go ahead and share my screen. And I've also got resources in here. And especially today I wanted to do a shout out to Reza, who is kind of the reference video that I use. So let me go ahead and go over to, this is his video. It's another MVP. So this is one of the things that we're talking about in today's show. But we're also going to be talking about just several other options. So I don't want to cover the exact same things he covered. So I highly recommend you watch his video, because the things that I'm going to be showing are going to be slightly different and just different options and gotchas and things that you have. So if you are in Teams, you go to Teams, and once you go to Teams, you go to this Power Hour team that you're in, and you go to the general channel, and I create different tabs for the different episodes as we go. And then once you get to today's episode, you click the little chat box so you can watch the video and chat with us at the same time. Hi, everybody. And then also on the posts tab, this is where I put some references for today's show. So it says resources 817. So it's got that link to that video that I just pointed out, and also a Power Apps reference page for some of the formulas we'll be talking about. All right, so let's go ahead and go to Power Apps. So what we're going to do is what I'm going to teach today is how to create a button in Power Apps that is going to give you a CSV file of some list of information. So there are a lot of different factors and variables and different ways you can do this, though. So first of all, where do you want the CSV file to be? Where do you want it to end up? Because one option you have here, and this is what I find with a lot of my customers, is they just want a quick list of data that they can send to somebody, like email somebody outside of the company. And for that, usually what they want is to have that CSV file in an email. So that way you have your data, that you filter down your data, you get the list of information you want, you click export, and it spits it out as CSV attached to an email, and then they can just hit forward and send it to whoever they want. Or you could even get really fancy and put an email box in your interface in Power Apps of who they want to send that CSV file to. That's an option as well. But the question is, do you want your flow to send the CSV as an attachment in an email, or do you immediately want the CSV, like you click the button and the CSV arrives just on your screen, downloads onto your screen, or navigates you to that CSV file directly from the Power App? So that's where the question comes into play. So what Reza does a lot in his video is he shows you the option of clicking a button and immediately having the CSV basically be available in the Power App to be able to download it to your computer, and actually have it navigate you and have the browser launch you straight over into the CSV file. But it's up to you as far as what your business requirements are. So my most common business requirement when I'm doing the CSV files is for it to be emailed. So that's what I'm going to show first in my demo. That's where we're going to start with, is taking a list of information and email it. So that's the first factor you have. The first factor is, where do you want the CS file to be? And then the next option is what set of data do you want that file to contain? So what a very common scenario is for someone to be looking at a list of information and maybe doing some sort of sorting and filtering, or if you have a list of information, have maybe just the ones that are yours. Like in this case, it's projects. So I could say maybe I want a list of projects that have me as the project manager, and I just want a list of my own projects, or I just want to be able to filter this by just the active projects and have it export based on some filter value, like a status or a date range, just whatever filtered set of information you want. So the information that you want is another sort of factor here. So there are going to be some gotchas when it comes to the way that data looks once it gets exported. So we're going to start from scratch and build the button in the Power App and have just a simple collection of data that it sends. And then we're going to talk about the options and kind of what the data looks like and how to make it look nicer. Are you ready? Is everybody ready? Okay. And I'll kind of keep an eye on the chat, or Joelle, you can shout out. Let me see, let me move my chat over here. Let me make sure I can hear you. Joelle, can you talk? Say hi.
Hello.
Okay, I turned my speaker up a little bit because I didn't want there to be echo, so all right. That's the tricky thing with me being able to hear Joelle and then there being echo. So I turned it up a little bit, hopefully. Just yell really loud. I'm just kidding. Okay, so you start off with, you have a Power App. And what I'm doing here is I am going to create a button. So I created a button. I'll just delete it. You can just make your button look however you want. In this case, all you really need is something that has an on select, and every single object in a Power App has an on select. So you just, whatever you use as your button, and I'll just use this little download icon, or you could use an actual button control, whatever you use, you just need to be able to click it. And that's where you go to the on select. So when I go to the on select right now, it says false. It's not doing anything. So let me close this little panel. So we'll pretend that that panel hasn't popped up yet. You go to your action option here and you choose Power Automate. And that's what brings up this little panel here. So you can actually add a flow, like create one from scratch right in this screen, or it will give you a list of all the flows that you've created already that have Power Apps as a trigger. So what I usually like to do is you could just create your flow directly from here. What I usually like to do is just create the flow ahead of time and get everything correct and get it, get all the parameters that I need. And then lastly, go into the Power App and then add, and then just pick it from a list. But you can go either direction. So before we start sending information over to a flow, let's go ahead and create a flow. So obviously I already created one called test before demo because I wanted to test it. So I created test before demo, and I went to, let's go to my little email. And the simple thing that I did right before I started this episode was I just ran this little test by just clicking a button and having it send me all this data. Now that's very ugly. So the ugliness of this data is one of the things that we're going to be talking about once we get this raw list of information sent to us. But that I just wanted to show you that it has run successfully. And so we're going to go through the process of making that be the output of getting a CSV file as an attachment. So we'll start with a new flow, and my flow interface is being weird. New flow. It's like everything I click on in this screen like doesn't click for some reason. I really do feel like they're in the middle of updating something. Okay, new flow, and I just like to choose skip on this screen, and then I choose Power Apps as my trigger. And there's a Power Apps version 2. You really could use either one of them. This one's easy to use. Power Apps version 2 just has a prettier interface for adding all the different parameters you want to receive from your Power App. So the way this trigger works is that you're going to send data. When you click the button in the Power App, it's going to send data over to the flow. So what I have to do is I have to define what pieces of data I want to be sent from the Power App to the flow. And right now, it obviously if I click the button, it wouldn't be doing anything. So not only does my flow need to do something and have some actions, but those actions are usually going to involve some data that comes from the Power App. So the good thing about Reza's solution here, this export to CSV option, is that it is very generic. So with this option that I'm showing you, you can just name your flow export to Excel, and you can use that exact same flow every single place in every app in every Power App that you have, and you won't have to create multiple flows. You can just create one flow and use it everywhere. So this is a very, like, you're basically fine-tuning everything that the way you want the data to look and the columns to look in the Power App before you send it over, because every time you kick off this flow, you're just sending over just some blob of data from some Power App you're using, and then you're doing something with it. So in this case, what I'm doing with it is I'm going to convert it to CSV. So the first thing that I'm going to do is a compose action, and we're going to use the compose action to get that big chunk of content, just that big list of stuff. So that's going to be, I'm going to rename this content, because whenever you ask in Power Apps, whenever you do this ask in Power Apps to have it create each parameter that you need for all the information you need to send from the Power App to the flow, it's going to use the name of whatever your action is. So my action here is, I'm naming it content so that what it's called will make sense. So as soon as I click this button, ask in Power Apps, see it put the name of the action here, underscore inputs. So that's why I renamed it. So then the next thing you're going to do is it's just going to send you this big ugly blob of information. And Reza actually breaks it down in his video of like what it looks like and why you have to do certain things. I'm just going to go to the next step of creating a CSV table. So what you have to do is it's going to send this data over as a big blob of JSON data from the Power App to the flow. And then you have to use this expression in the flow called JSON. And that's going to take it and recognize it as JSON, as sort of like a little database, a list of things instead of one big long string. So I use JSON, the JSON expression, and then I go to my outputs, my content output. So that big blob of information that I just had here. So I use that in my JSON. All right. So then once I've created the CSV file, then the next step is going to be, so this is where kind of what is your business requirement? Because the next step could be to just send that CSV file an email. And I'm going to do that, like I mentioned, I'm going to do the send an email action. And what Reza does in his video is he does the, basically creates the CSV file and creates it in OneDrive. And then he takes that CSV file and creates a nice pretty link to it and then sends it back to the Power App. So I'm just doing a different option. I'm just doing the option where it's going in an email, but you know, that's why I didn't want to do the same. I didn't want to do the exact same thing he's doing. So if you'd like for it to be presented back to you directly in the Power App and go directly to the CSV file from there, then that's where you can go watch this video. So right now I'm just going to put myself in here. And then I'm just going to put test, blah, blah, blah. And then the important part to get the actual attachment is to give it a name. Now I'm just going to say test file. It doesn't matter, something.csv. But obviously you could use dynamic data. So you could have information, and I'm going to go a little bit more into this information of kind of what you'd want the email to say in a minute. So, but let's get this working, and then we're going to add on to it. So I'm going to take this data from my create CSV file. Am I zoomed in? Okay, let me see, make sure I zoom in. There we go. I'm going to take this data here in the attachments content and from my CSV table action. And that's the trick to having this big blob of data come from Power App, get converted, recognized as JSON, and then get saved as converted to CSV. I'm not putting the file anywhere. I'm not putting it in SharePoint. I'm not putting it in OneDrive in this example. I'm just taking it and sending it. All right, so then, oh, look what I did. I created it as a really ugly name like this. I click save and I didn't give it like a nice pretty name. Let's see. Let's see if it's not too late. I might be dealing with just a really ugly name the whole time. Try and remember to name it something nice and neat with no spaces in it when you're using it in your Power App, because it's going to create the name of a function is going to be what the name of your flow is. So yeah, keep that in mind. Don't do what I just did and let it make up its own name. Okay, so now I've got a flow called export to Excel. And now I'm not sure if I just created the flow, so I'm not sure if my Power App's going to recognize it when I click to add a flow. I think I probably have to refresh that list of things. So let's see. I'm here. I click on a button that I want to kick off the flow. I choose Power Automate, and then I'm going to like maybe, let's see. Yeah, no, it's not. It's not in there. Let me refresh it. There it is, export to Excel. All right, so you just have to refresh your list of flows. In the worst case scenario, usually I will just take that whole Power App and completely save it and close it. So now it's here. Now this is confusing because you used to be able to just choose it and it would create the function for you, but I feel like they've changed something or done something weird because it's not as intuitive. It's not putting that function in here. And literally yesterday when I was doing this, it worked fine. So I'm not sure what Microsoft has been doing in here. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to start typing it. And so in the worst case scenario, if you don't see this function be generated and appear in your onSelect, then that's what you can do. You can just type the name of your flow. Fortunately, I got the nice neat name that I added. You can just type the name of your flow and it's going to have a dot run. So as soon as I started typing it, you could see that it appeared in the list. Now notice that it says run, and remember what I called it in the flow? I called it, it said ask in Power Apps, and it was that content inputs thing. And so that's what any parameters that you create over in the flow where you do ask in Power Apps, see how it's called content inputs? So that's why it's called that over here, content input. So that's where it wants the content that I want to send it. So in this example, I'm going to start off with just this collection that I've got that I'm showing in the gallery, and then I'll show you how to do it a little bit more dynamically. In this example, what I've already done, and I taught this in another Power Hour, actually. I taught a Power Hour about how to create a filtered gallery, and we created all these little filter boxes across the top and the little filter button. So that's a whole other hour somewhere in my list of Power Hours. But so here I've already got this, it's a collection. So it's a collection of filtered projects. So I'm just going to take this and then I'll show you how to do a little bit more dynamically. So what I need to do is I need to use another JSON function here because I need to take whatever that collection is and put that inside of this JSON function with this include binary data thing. All right, so JSON, let me see. All right, so this is what it's using. It's going to take that collection that's basically what I'm looking at on the screen, and it's going to send that when I click the this button. All right, let me go ahead and preview this so I can change my filter here. Got complete projects. And then, so I'm filtering it by complete projects. And then now I'm looking at complete projects. That is actually in here, this a collection of complete projects. And then what happens when I click the button? All right. And again, in Reza's, when you click the button, it's sending the data back to the Power App and it's presenting you with the CSV immediately. But mine's just slightly different. So then I go and look at my flow. And I can see that it succeeded. And let's go look. I see that I got an email and I've just got a subject line of test. What do y'all think? Golf clap so far? Pretty cool. What does everybody think? Okay, cool. What do you think? Is that pretty fun? Except it's pretty ugly, right? So that's the biggest stumbling block to this. Now, you end up with this big ugly blob of data. Now, here is the conundrum, because what you can do, if you just have one flow and you're just doing this one time, and you don't need to have this generic concept where you have the same flow that you're using in lots of different places and lots of different apps, and you need it to be generic, what you can do is use a select action in the flow to fine tune what the columns look like and what your list of data looks like. But if you do that, then you can't use this one single generic flow in lots of different apps, because then once I do this, it's going to be very specific to this list of information that I'm sending. In this case, it's a list of projects. Does that make sense? So this is the option you would do if you only need to do this once. So I'm taking my, actually, I'll move this up here. I'm taking my content, and then what I can do with the select function is I can say, like, it's gonna have me map out which columns are gonna go with which like names that I'm giving it. Test first column, like that. Now, a painful thing about this, and Joelle, I know you've had to deal with this before, is then if you're going to do this, you either have to parse JSON and get all the names of all the columns in it, or you have to write this little item expression. Do you remember that, with the little item, parentheses, question mark, brackets, blah, 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 and then the name, then the raw name of the system name of the column. And then so you'd have to do that for each one of these to have it show, like, map the correct column name that you're giving it to the column name over on the right side. So like if I put title in here, that's going to be like the system name. I know there's a title column in every list. So you would have to do that, but it's still an easy way to be able to name all of your columns. Okay, I'm not going to do that, but that is one option you have. So then you would take this list of information and then you would use it and create a CSV table from this new information, this new array that you created. And then that's the CSV table that you would send in the email. So you're just adding an extra step. So that's one way to make the data look prettier, to map pretty names that you create with system names of the columns. So another thing that that's another factor that I came across in doing this for a customer recently is that we're sending an email from this flow. But of course, Reza's example is just presenting you right directly back with the CSV file. So you're not sending it in any email to anybody, so it doesn't matter. It's just whoever's using the Power App, they're the ones who get the file immediately. But in this example, if we're sending in an email, who do we send it to? So I want it to send in an email to just whoever is the person using the Power App, but I don't have that yet as a parameter. I have no idea right now who the person is that kicked that off. So that's another piece of information that I'm going to need to ask. And so I can, instead of sending it to Laura Rogers, I can use my use dynamic data and say ask in Power Apps. And if I would have named this action something nicer, it would have given it a nicer name, but it called it send an email v22. And so that's going to be the name of the parameter of who I need to send it to. Another thing that you're going to want, if you have this as a nice generic flow that you're using lots of lists, is you're going to want to send that, when you send that email, you're going to want them to know the name of the list, the name, like projects, like what is this a list of, right? So that's another piece of information that you can just use a compose action to create, to make it create like this little parameter. You could just put it directly in the subject, but I want this to be called list name there. And then I'll ask that in Power Apps too. So now I'm going to have 3 different pieces of data that I can send over from the Power App. I can send the big blob of content, the name of the list, which will just be some text, and then the name of the person to send it to. So then in my subject, I can say list exported and put the name of the actual list, and I can put that in the subject and the body, test list, blah, 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 list name. So then I have my list name to do something dynamic with. And it can also say, like, instead of just calling this a test file.csv, I can say I can incorporate the name of the list in that file name too. And you could also like incorporate maybe that if you wanted to have like the ID of the item from SharePoint or other pieces of information you want to send over. Okay, so now I'll save that. And then once you make changes to your flow and you've already added your flow to the Power App is going to be very confused. So what you end up having to do is remove, and I'm going to just, I'll show you the error that it gives. It's basically, it's going to be confused about what your data is, and then you actually have to delete the connection and re-add it. So let's see, what if I try and run this? When I try and run it, it's going to say, hey, we're missing some parameters. Yeah. So it still says run. Yeah, see the schema has changed. So it's basically telling me it's got a schema. There's a difference in the schema in the flow and in the Power App. So I'm just going to take both of these, and this other one's just one that I'm not using anymore, and I'll remove it anyway. So then I delete them, and I recommend just taking this piece of data and just copying it to your clipboard or cutting it and pasting it in your clipboard so that you can just paste it again in a minute after you've reconnected, because this on select just needs to be empty before I can start doing, adding another flow to it. So now I'll go add a flow, and I'm going to go ahead and refresh this list just in case, just so it will get like my new list of parameters and everything. This is going to be one of the biggest painful things that you have to deal with when you're doing the Power App to Flow connection, is changes in your flow getting the Power App all confused and having to refresh this and change your parameters and things like that. So let's see, export. So it's going to be the name of your flow.run. And so now notice it's got all 3 parameters in here. So it's going to have that first one before, when I copied to the clipboard, I had the first one in there, but now I've got to have the other 2 parameters. So who am I going to send this to in an email? I can say user.email, and that's going to be just the person, whoever's using this Power App right now. And I probably, in all my Power Apps though, since I use the logged in user a lot, I probably have this in my OnStart already. So where I usually take, usually create a variable called var_current_user, and just in the OnStart of every single app I create, I say set var_current_user, and I use that user open close parentheses. So since I already have who the logged in user is in my variable, I'll just use that here. And then I'm just going to use their email. And then my third parameter is going to be the list name, and I'll just type projects. And that's just where I can just type something. All right, so now it will, I'll do that again. Try it out. And I see the email arrived. Look at that. So now it says list exported projects, and it's got my big ugly list of information. Okay, so here's what's happening. Now we're going to move on to the part where we can make the data look a little nicer and some options that we have. So why does it look like this? First of all, any column that is a person column is going to have all this raw data with the claims and email and display name, all that stuff. Anything that is a choice column is going to have this value thing in front of it. And also in anything that is like a lookup column, it's going to have a value and an ID. It's going to have all just this raw data. So when you're exporting your file, you probably don't want it to be sending it to somebody like this. That's not very useful, right? So in Reza's video, what he does is he does a for all. And what he's doing in his Power App is he's going to be saying, okay, here's my set of information that I want to send, and then looping through everything through each item. And for each item that it comes across, it's then collecting it into a new collection, nice and neat, with exactly just the columns that you want and with the exact names that they want, with just the perfect data that you want in your new collection. So what I'm going to show you is just a different way to do that. And I think I'm not sure, I haven't tested this, but Chris and I were talking about this. I think that if you're dealing with especially a long list of information, this method that I'm going to show you with the add columns and the show columns might be more efficient than the for all, which has to loop through and do something on every single item in the list. So that's going to be kind of the where you draw the line. And also just the quantity of columns that you're dealing with. You might not want to spend like 5 hours if you have like 60 columns, like typing the names of every single one of them. So that two completely different options. So what I'm doing here is I've got my list of information, and I've got and what I'm doing is whenever I change this drop down box, it's filtering. I'm clicking a filter button and it's creating this collection for me. What Reza shows in his video is you have this filtered list of information based on maybe a drop down, but it's when he's sending his data over. See, what I'm doing is I'm taking this collection that I already have here. And so the other option you have is typing the name of your gallery. In this, in case, I think the name of my gallery is Gal Projects, just the name of your gallery dot all items. So that way, just whatever's in your gallery, whatever you filtered it to, whatever that data is, just whatever you see in your gallery, that is what the data is that you're sending over to your flow. Does that make sense? So it's just, in my example, I'm doing a collect already when I'm clicking this button, and I've got this collection, this separate set of information. And in his, he's maybe just directly filtering that database or list, whatever his list of information is, and then he's just referencing whatever the gallery is showing, which is already a filtered list of information. So again, two different ways to accomplish this concept of having a filtered list of information. All right, so I'm taking this collection here, and what I've done is, as you can see, you saw it was very ugly. So one thing that you can do, and this is, again, what I'm about to show you with this add columns, is instead of doing the for all, looping through everything. Okay, so there's a function called add columns, and I put a link to this in the reference material. Before I do this, does anybody have any questions or comments? Joelle, did you notice anything?
Sorry, it's not reloading for some reason on my end automatically. Sometimes it really reloads automatically.
You're right, Lisa. The phrase parse JSON strikes terror in my heart too. Yes, they're agreeing with what I said about the select action. And then Nick loves the parse JSON action. Let's see. Blah, blah, blah.
I don't think there was anything.
Okay, so cool. Awesome.
Oh, it looks like Gary used drop columns to do this. You just mentioned that. Gary mentioned that he got this working with a much more complicated solution using drop columns.
Yep, you can. Okay, so here is what the options are. You have drop columns, which lets you just get rid of any columns that that you don't want to see, like maybe some of those system columns, like maybe you don't want to have the modified and the created and the compliance asset ID, whatever that is, and the ID, maybe just columns you want to get rid of. So you can use drop columns, but you also, drop columns doesn't accommodate for being able to get the nice pretty value out of something that is a choice or a lookup or a person field, and being able to have that nice looking information instead of that big cryptic ugly with the curly brackets. So add columns And what Reza did with the for all give you the ability to like give it a nicer name and have nice, neat looking data. So as I, let's see, I'll show you that. It's like Power Apps add columns function. And that's one of the links that I put in the reference material. So you just say add columns, and you tell it your list of information that you want to add columns to, and then you're basically giving each column a name and telling it what data you want in it. So I'm creating a collection of a table, and then I'm clear collect, and then add columns inside of the clear collect. So this is kind of more of what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear collect and add columns kind of inside of this clear collect, and I'm going to create a new collection. All right. And then I'll call it new collection. Not very creative. And then I'm going to do add columns. And what am I adding columns to? I've already got my COL filtered projects, and I need to tell it the name of each column and what the value needs to be in it. So my first column is going to be, I think priority was one of them. Now, the trick to add columns is you can't add the same column name that you already have in your list. So if I already have a column called priority in SharePoint, then I can't just create one called priority when I'm adding a column. I have to give it a slightly different name. I'm just gonna, not very creative, just gonna call it priority new. Pick from your list of data priority dot value. There we go. Because let's go look at that priority. Now, hopefully, I think it has a column called priority. I'm not making that up. Let's go look at this. Yeah, priority, and it's a choice. So another one that we'll have is customer lookup, and that we'll need to make look nicer. And then project type and project status are both choices as well. So priority.value, and then the next thing is going to be like customer. I'll just call it, I don't think there's one called customer, and it's going to be my customer lookup column, not customer ID, customer lookup dot, and then that's where I put the value. So each column that I have, I think I had a project status, and then let's see, project. I'm just going to do a few. So as you can see, this would get very, very tedious when you have a lot of columns and a lot of ugly columns and choice columns and things like that. Okay, what is it telling me? Oh, I didn't put a semicolon after it. Okay, so I'm going to collect, and then I'm going to do, I'll show you what this is going to provide me before I start trying to export this, because I want you to see what this data is going to look like when I'm just adding columns to it. So I'm going to take this command that I just created, and I'm just going to put it in a button by itself, just so we can run that one thing and you can see what that data looks like. So I'm just going to run this button, which is just collecting for me. So then I can go look at my collection, COL projects new collection. And then this is where I've got my data. So I've got a bunch of my raw data, and you can see that each column, that's one of those more complex ones, has these big purple boxes, because it's stored in those big, like a little miniature table. And then where's my columns that I added? Let's see. Gotta find them. Project. Oh, project status, there's one. So you can see project status says complete, and it just has the nice simple word instead of having that project status like big, ugly, like complex field. So basically all I've done is add extra columns to a big blob of data that I already had. So then what you can do is if you want to narrow it down and only show, and you don't want to have all those system columns and extra things over when you get your CSV file, then you have already added your nice pretty columns with the pretty names. Then you can use the show columns function, and show columns is where you just tell it specifically which columns you want to have in your collection, and you're defining every single column, and you just name every single column. And that could also get tedious if you have 60 or 100 columns, which I've seen recently. So what I did in my solution, again, there's lots of different ways you can slice and dice this, is I did this first collection and then I created another one. I'll call it COL projects export. And that's the one that I'm going to end up exporting down here. And then I'm going to do show columns. So I could have done show columns first and just done just that and defined it as something to export, but then I wouldn't, if I only did show columns, then I would still have those big, ugly, cryptic things in the curly brackets, all these things, because all I'm doing with show columns is just telling it which columns I want to include, but it's not digging in and getting like the correct, like nicer looking data. Does that make sense? So I'm going to do show columns, and then I'm going to say, so what show columns from where, and my COL projects new collection. And then this is where you just name every single column. So I've got like, what's the name of one of my columns? Project name is one of them. Now project name is actually the title column. So let me see, title. And then you just keep typing out columns. So what I'm going to do is I'm just only going to type the names of these columns that I took time to make kind of look nice up here. Because again, this is very tedious. It's very tedious to sit here and write all of your column names out, and it would take a couple of hours in the real world. Quote. And then I'll just throw in like one like modified, and that's just a regular date column that was already there. I didn't change it or change the syntax of it or anything. I just also wanted to include that. What's another, let's see, like hours planned. That could be one that I could include. It's nice and simple. It's just a number. Project summary is also one that I could include because it's just a single line of text. The problem is I have to get the system name of it, and I didn't do the add columns and give it a different name or give it a nicer name. So project X0020 _ summary, that's what's going to end up in my exported file. So I'll just throw that one in too, just to show you. So now I've got a combination here of columns that I basically created in the command above with my add columns by just giving them nicer names, or tapping into that raw data like with a dot value. A combination of those and just the raw column names that I haven't changed or anything. So then I'm going to take, instead of using that collection of filter projects, when I send it over to Flow, I'm going to do COL projects export, and maybe I'll do format text so you can kind of see this better. So this is the key here. This is the difference between what Reza's doing in his video, where he's doing a for all, and he's looping through each item, and he's just telling it exactly which columns to create and mapping each one to what the names are. And then what I'm doing, where I'm doing add columns to whatever filtered list I already have, and then which is giving it some nicer names and giving it the nicer looking data, and then do show columns, and then take that and send it over to the flow. So let's try that out. Moment of truth, right? Let's see. Oh, I got an email. Let's see. Let me close that. List exported projects. Drum roll. Okay, so I've got my customer modified, my priority. Let me just kind of there. Only one of these had a project summary. So yeah, those are
They
weird
are
customer
asking,
names. I have to look at my data. What?
They're very much asking to see a people column.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Let's do a people column. Okay. So the people column, I have to do, I'll call it created by. So when I add columns, I'm going to do created by, and then that's the created by dot display name. And then in this case, in this list, I have a project manager also. So I'll do project MGR. I'm just trying to give something a different name, than make sure I'm not adding things that I already have in the list. And then that's the project manager.
I think it's owner, project owner.
Do what?
Is it called project owner?
What?
Is it called project owner?
Oh, sorry. I thought you said project over. Oh, here it is, project manager.
Oh, okay. I thought it was project owner.
Okay, so then now that I've added those two to the add columns, then I also want to include them in the show columns. I just have to be sure and give them that, that new name that I just created. And we could go look at this collection. We can go look at both collections. So let me go ahead and click the button. So now it's generated those collections, and view collections, COL projects export. So that is my nicer looking. Look, there's Shane. He's got a video about how to do this too. Shane's one of my project managers. So that is what that data looks like that it's sending over to the flow. And then I get the email. And there are my nice, pretty display names. Now I chose display name. I didn't choose email. So if you wanted their email address too, you could do add columns and add another column that has their email address. So you could have the project manager display name and then the project manager email address in separate columns if you wanted. Now, what do you all think about the concept of emailing it versus needing to have it just immediately right there in the Power App? Like, as far as just business, like real world, what are you going to do with that CSV file? Because if you have it provided to you immediately in the Power App, it's going to be like going to end up in your downloads folder, I think. And then do you ultimately need to send it to somebody in an email anyway? So I guess it just depends on your business case or what are you doing with that information. So Nick is right. So Nick has got a good point. He says, keep in mind when using the add columns, depending on the data source size and any calculations and lookups, it could take a bit more time to build the new collection. So also, he recommended using the monitor. So there's that monitor tool that's available inside of the Power App. So you could actually try using the Res's method of doing the for all and looping through each thing and creating and collecting for each item into a new collection, and run the monitor and see how long that takes, and then also do this add columns way and see how long that takes. And again, depending on how massive your list of data is, then you might want to use, maybe one of those methods or the other. And your quantity of columns and your quantity of data they're going to give you different outcomes. Let's see. Queenie says, I prefer email. Sometimes things get lost if presented immediately. Gary says, I'm using version this now and send it by email because they want to save it themselves. Okay, interesting. Another thing that you might want to do if you're sending this in an email and you're looking at this filtered list of information is let them know what that piece of information was that they filtered by. So obviously, if you're just looking like at a static gallery that just has a list of your own stuff filtered by you, then you could just have just hard code it, just type that the email is going to say my projects or something. But if you want the email that you're sending to also include what is this a filtered list of, that's something that you can add in. So I created I've got this collection that's got a list of what the statuses are. And maybe I want what status was selected here to be part of the email that gets sent. Because obviously I can open up the data and I can look at it and I can tell in the status column that they all say the status is complete. But if you want that to be mentioned in the email, then that's another piece of data you would want to send over. Gary said, do you need JSON format dot include binary data if you're not using binary data? I don't know, Gary. I don't even know what binary data is, to be honest. Not a dev. It does require that you have some JSON format defined in there when you use the JSON expression function. Nick says, rather than sending it to email, downloading it to their OneDrive in a new folder and send them an email with a link to the document in the OneDrive. Oh, that is a good idea, Nick. So what you could do, let's go back over to the flow. We've got 7 minutes. Sure, we can add both of those in there. Transform it from CSV to XLSX. Nick, is that an action though? I'm intrigued to know if that's possible because I know that there's not an action to transform something from CSV to XLS. I'm gonna watch and see what you say about that one. Okay, so here's the CSV that's getting created. So what he's suggesting is OneDrive. So I'm going to create, go to OneDrive for Business, create file. So I can tell it a specific folder that I want to. I'll just do the root for now. If you have a specific folder, you could do that. My file name, this is going to be similar to what I did down here with where I was defining my file name. So I can say my file name in that case is just, I was calling it test file, and then whatever the list name was, .csv. And then the file content, again, that's create CSV file output. And so now what I'm doing here is creating a CSV file in my OneDrive. So then when you send the email, instead of actually attaching the CSV file, what he's saying is to send them a link to it. What I like to do when I've got a file and I need to send a link to it, I like to use the sharing link, and Reza does that in his example also, creating a sharing link. So my file is going to be the file that I did up here that when I created the file, and then the link type is going to be view or edit. I'll just take them to the view button, and then I don't want anonymous. I'll just say my organization, and that one's not even required. Just leave that empty. And then when I send the email, I can just send them the hyperlink to it. And then I put the web URL. And no attachment, and just send them a link to it. And then also what I was talking about with sending over the information about what they're filtering by would also be a good piece of information to have. And just a simple way to do that is going to be in this compose action. Just do another compose action that's going to have filter by. And then you can just tell the Power Apps can send that information over. So I'll say ask in Power Apps, And then then I have to redo my connection in the Power App again because I added a new parameter. Pretty much any change you make to the flow, you have to go redo your connection in the Power App. So let's see, go to my connection. Oh, I have to go to Power Automate and remove it from the app completely. And then take this. I'll just use this button, this empty button that I did, just to regenerate this thing. And I'll be sure and refresh this too, so it'll know all my changes. Export to Excel. And go. Oh, Nick says he's not sure if it is or not, just shooting from the hip. That would be nice. People ask me that all the time. So that would be huge if that was like an actual possibility to get an Excel file instead of a CSV file. So then we've got.
I think I think he was saying it might be possible, but it would be a big workaround kind of thing.
Oh yeah, so I don't need that anymore. Okay, so now my command is sorry, what was that? My command is giving me an error because it's expecting another parameter now, my filter by. So for my filter by, I need to tell it what I selected in this dropdown, and this dropdown is called DRP status. So I'm going to send across my DRP status. So whatever I selected there, selected text, just my selected value. So then it's going to take that information and send it over. So let's try this again. I think, yeah, I saved it. One more time. You know, you always like to add extra things and see what's going to happen, right? I didn't see my email arrived. Okay, so now it's got a link to the file. What I didn't do is I didn't include what it's being filtered by in the email. So I should have included that as well, right? So let me open my file and see. Yep, there's my test file projects.csv. And I can go look at the flow. Just go observe this last one that I sent over and just double check that it did get that, that status, which was complete. And come on, flow. So it's going to tell me in that little compose action that it's sent over that value of the word complete. And then obviously I could just include that dynamic information in the email that I'm sending, saying these are all the projects that are input complete. Not sure why this is taking so long, but you all get the gist, right? There we go. Filter by, yep, there's the word complete. So that's that one final step, is that I would be editing it and waiting another 5 minutes. Any last questions? Test list. Files that, projects that are and then I would put filter by, and then that would have the word complete. So that's where you would include that so that they know when they receive the email. And you could even add it to the file name if you wanted to. But if you're going to save this to OneDrive like I did, you're going to want to have a better file name, because when I created this file, it's got a very generic name. It doesn't have anything unique in it. So it would end up overriding it every time or giving you an error. So you'd probably want to put like UTC now or something very, or the ID of the item or something very unique, so that you actually end up with a different CSV file every time. So that's something you have to consider when you're creating a file versus just sending a CSV in an email. It doesn't matter what you call it. Whew. What do you think, Joelle? Is that pretty fun?
Yeah, it's cool.
All right, so thanks everybody for coming. It is 12 o'clock. Yeah, hopefully you all can try that out, and I'll be interested to hear kind of what options you chose and what you thought about it. exporting and receiving the CSV immediately versus getting an email, and then kind of different ways that you decided, which columns you want to see. So thanks everybody for coming. We're not having Power Hour next week. We are having our live online 5-day advanced Power Apps and Power Automate course. So you all check that out on our schedule, iwmentor.com, and click schedule. And I'd love for you all to join us in class next week. Over and out. Bye, Joelle.